just died. I am the resurrection and the life. Those who believe in me, even though they die, will live. And whoever believes in me will never die. And then he asked Martha, do you believe this? And Martha said, yes, Lord, I believe that you are the Messiah, the Son of God, the one coming into the world. If Jesus had asked this of Bob after Christy died, he would have said these same words. If Jesus asked Bob after Diane died, he would have said these same words. Yes, Lord, I believe. Bob's rock-solid faith saw him through so many difficult times. It was a testimony of faithful endurance in the midst of suffering. Christy's death in the car accident at the age of 9 was a terrible, terrible thing indeed. And then those grueling 6 months when Diane had her leg amputated and Bob went into the hospital and rehab for his heart condition. Then Diane suffered a catastrophic stroke on the way back from visiting him. And then the amputation of his own leg and his loss of independence. But for both Bob and Diane, there was never a wallowing in self-pity. I never saw Diane or Bob cry or rail against God or wonder. They simply relied on their rock-solid faith. And I often thought of the example that they set for the rest of the congregation and also for me 2 years ago when I broke my neck and pelvis in a car accident. As I went through that, I often thought of Bob and Diane going through theirs with faith and no self-pity and trust in the future. I referred to Bob as our elder statesman because he not only served as a leader in the parish, but he did so from his very heart and soul. Bob was a Christian man. And Bob's love for his family, both the Maynards and the Havens, was very strong indeed. You were his pride and his joy and his hope and his delight. Every Sunday morning we would hear about the visit that was coming up, that Bob Jr. was coming, or that he had just gotten pictures of the great-grandchildren, and the photos and the calendars would always be circulated among everybody during coffee hour because he wanted us to know how wonderful his family was. And of course, the Wedding Ann album that came out every August 19th on Diane's birthday. After he lost his leg, it was his family that he turned to. He deeply wanted to stay at home, and Karen and Bill made that possible. And his love for them was returned by them 100-fold. And Bob, he talked about you all the time. At every visit I would hear about almost day by day until the big event happened. He so looked forward to your time with him. He was a family man. And then there was Bob, the member of St. Albans. In my 12 years here, Bob served as warden of the parish, on the church board. He sang in the choir. He bore the chalice at communion. He read the lessons. He was a member of Bible study. He was an acolyte. Are you getting the picture? Bob was our elder statesman. Every event, every holy day worship, and of course, every Sunday, Bob was here. And after his amputation, we had a secretary who was disabled, and he made it his ministry to call her every Tuesday and Friday morning to support her as she supported us. And after he could no longer drive, Michael led the way for us by bringing Bob to church every Sunday. And so we had a number of people that made sure that Bob got here to church every Sunday morning. Brian and Jim and Rob and Ham and David and Meg followed Michael in making sure that Bob was with his St. Albans family, because he was as important to us as we were to him, and he's supposed to be in that second pew, and I noticed that somebody put his bulletin out for him today. So thank you for that. Once we asked Bob to give a witness about what St. Albans means to him. And this is what he told the parish. Diane and I first came to St. Albans at the end of June 1989. We were warmly welcomed and continued our ministries here. Diane was on the altar guild, vestry, and choir. I also was a chorister and vestry person, as well as lay reader and acolyte. It felt like home with lots of family members. We felt very welcomed and supported. Diane and I were married for 54 years. She entered God's closer presence in April 2010, and her ashes are in the memorial garden. At that time, I was recovering from open heart surgery. The parish family was very supportive during this difficult time, for which I am continually thankful. One might think we love this parish and its parishioners. That is an understatement. St. Albans is my family and home with Jesus. One of my concerns is the persecuted church. I have given presentations concerning it which were well received. Two major points to remember, and we hear this from Bob one last time. Number one, in the 20th century, more Christians were martyred than in all 19 centuries preceding it combined. In the 21st, the persecution rate is increasing. And number two, in the early church, the service was not considered complete until prayers were made for the persecuted brothers and sisters. Bob did this every Sunday. I intend to remain at St. Albans until I join Diane in God's closer presence and my ashes join hers in the memorial garden. Signed, Bob Maynard. And so goodbye, my friend and brother in Christ. We will miss your puns. Every time we mentioned Pharisees and Sadducees, Bob would have to say, because they didn't believe in the resurrection, they were sad, you see. He always made sure we remembered in Bible study that Jesus was the one who bought our rap sheet. And he loved his French and would often greet me Sunday morning in French instead of in English, and talk about his grandmother calling him Baby and all of his French heritage that was so important to him. And so now, Bob, you dance with joy in the presence of Jesus Christ, and Diane and Christy and all you love to have gone before. Those persecuted brothers and sisters that you've prayed for all these years, with your family and your St. Albans family, waiting until the day when we dance with you in the kingdom of heaven. Amen.
Amen.
And now I would like to invite